Can I speak English fluently in 5 months? It was a Tuesday afternoon when I felt the weight of my frustration with learning English. Every time I tried to speak, I stumbled over words, unsure of my grammar and pronunciation. My teacher, Mrs. White, noticed that I was discouraged. She had always been patient with me, but today I felt I needed more than just encouragement. I needed a new way to think about it. After the lesson ended, Mrs. White asked me to stay behind. I hesitated at first, but then I walked up to her desk. She smiled warmly, as always, and motioned for me to sit down. "You look like you have got something on your mind, Ethan," she said, her voice kind and understanding. "I just don't feel like I'm getting any better at English," I admitted. "I have been trying so hard, but it's just not working. I don't think I will ever be fluent." Mrs. White nodded thoughtfully. "I understand how you feel. But let me ask you something. Do you know what fluency really means?" I raised my shoulders. Isn't fluency about speaking perfectly? Like a native speaker? She laughed softly. "That's a common misconception. Fluency doesn't mean you speak perfectly all the time. It's about being able to communicate naturally and comfortably. Fluency means you can express yourself and understand others without too much hesitation. Even native speakers make mistakes. Fluency is about smooth communication, not perfection." I was a little surprised. I'd always thought that fluency meant speaking like the people I saw on TV, without any mistakes or pauses. Mrs. White continued, "Fluency isn't a destination. It's a journey. And I believe you can become fluent in 5 months if you follow the right approach." 5 months? I asked, not sure if I believed her. That sounds impossible. Is that really possible? "Absolutely," she said with a confident smile. "But it won't happen unless you put in the right effort. It's not just about the time you spend studying. It's about how you spend that time." Her words hit me hard. I'd always thought that if I studied for years, I'd eventually get there. But now Mrs. White was telling me that time alone wasn't enough. I needed to be strategic and focused if I wanted to reach fluency. "Let me show you how to do it," she said. She took out a notebook and started writing down some points. She explained the first crucial idea, the importance of both quality and quantity. To become fluent in 5 months, you will need to invest a significant quantity of time, she began. But the quality of that time is just as important as the quantity. I got a worried look. "What do you mean?" "Let's break it down," she said. "You will need about 600 hours of focused practice. That's around 20 hours a week for 5 months. If you can spend about 3 to 4 hours a day on your English practice, you'll be following the right way. But it's not about sitting in a classroom for 4 hours. This isn't about studying a lot, all at once. You can break it up into smaller, manageable parts during the day. This way, you are consistently engaging with the language." Mrs. White nodded. "Yes. Start your day by listening to an English podcast while you have breakfast. Spend 30 minutes during lunch reviewing vocabulary or reading an article in English. In the evening, watch an English TV show or a YouTube video and pay attention to the conversation. Then spend another 45 minutes practicing speaking, whether by repeating what you heard or having conversations with a partner. That doesn't sound so bad, I said. The idea of small practice sessions seemed more manageable than 4 hours straight of studying. But Mrs. White wasn't finished. She focused on the fact that quality is more important than quantity. You could spend 5 hours a day listening to English passively, but if you don't focus, it won't help you much. Instead, you should focus your time on active learning. Really listening, repeating phrases, and paying attention to sentence structures. And you must make sure that what you are listening to is at the right level for you. Not too easy, but not too difficult either. If you don't understand at least 80 of what you hear, it's too hard. Choose materials that challenge you, but don't make it too difficult. I see, I said, making notes. I had often listened to English podcasts without paying much attention. But now, I realized that I needed to engage deeply with what I was hearing. Mrs. White then turned the conversation to speaking. To become fluent, you must practice speaking. There's no way around it. Reading and listening are important, but speaking is what will really help you improve fluency. She paused, making sure I was listening. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. The important thing is that you keep speaking. Find a language partner or even talk to yourself. Practice aloud, even if you're just describing what you're doing during the day. And don't be afraid of mistakes. Embrace them. Mistakes are part of the process. The more you speak, the more confident you will become. Even if I make mistakes, I asked. Yes, especially in those moments. You will learn the most from those mistakes. Then Mrs. White shared a common myth. You don't need to know thousands of words to be fluent. In fact, she said, you only need around 4,000 words to speak effectively in everyday situations. You don't need to learn advanced or complex words. Just focus on the ones you will actually use. Words like weather, food, family, and work, these are the words you will use all the time. I never thought about it that way, I admitted. I have been trying to learn as many words as possible, but maybe I should focus on the most useful ones. Mrs. White smiled. Exactly. Master the most common words first. You will learn the rest as you go. She also reminded me to immerse myself in English as much as possible. You don't need to go to an English speaking country to immerse yourself. You can immerse yourself right at home. Change the language on your phone and computer. Listen to English music, watch TV shows in English, and try reading books in English. Surround yourself with the language, and it will start to feel more natural. I felt excited about the idea of immersion. It felt easier than I had thought. I can do that. But there was one more piece of advice she gave me that made all the difference. Train like a champion. Think of learning English like training for a sport, she said. To become really good at something, you need to practice every day. It's not about trying to learn everything in one day. It's about doing a little each day. Repetition is key. Review your vocabulary often. Use the words in sentences and speak out loud every day. Over time, it will feel more natural, like an athlete practicing their skills. Her words stayed in my mind. I realized learning English wasn't about being fast. It was about constant and regular effort. I promised to follow her advice and start her program. Over the next 5 months, my English got better than I expected. Every day, I practiced a little, listening, speaking, and reading, just like the program said. I didn't worry about being perfect. I made mistakes, but I kept going. Slowly, my confidence grew. I could talk in conversations, understand movies without subtitles, and even write longer texts in English. By the end of 5 months, I was able to speak confidently. I didn't speak perfectly, but I could easily hold conversations, and that was all that mattered. I could express my thoughts clearly, and that was enough for me. Mrs. White's advice had proven effective. I had achieved my goal, and I was excited to keep improving my English skills. That day, as I spoke with Mrs. White in English, she smiled and said, "I knew you could do it." And I realized that she was right. I had done it, and I felt proud of how far I had come. Mrs. White's advice and program completely changed how I viewed learning English. It set me on the right path, helping me achieve fluency step by step. Just as it helped me, I'm confident it will help you too. Take this challenge. You will see amazing results. And remember, you were born a champion. Now it's time to prove it. Let's do this together.